to the Inner Core. My name is Paul Rauschenbusch. I'm the Associate Dean of Religious Life in the Chapel at Princeton University. It's my pleasure to welcome you here today, and it's my special pleasure to welcome Khalid Latif here, who is the Muslim chaplain at Princeton University. He has recently arrived on campus, and we're so glad that you're with us and so glad that you could join us here today on the Inner Core.
I'm glad to be here.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about what Islam looks like on the college campus. What are some of the particular opportunities and challenges of being a Muslim chaplain in America on a secular university campus? You also have experience of that because you came from New York University. In fact, you still serve at New York University.
Yes.
So let's start at the beginning. Let's start Khalid Latif growing up in New Jersey. Am I right?
In New Jersey.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about yourself and where you came from and how you arrived to be the first Muslim chaplain at Princeton University.
Well, actually, I did grow up in Edison, New Jersey.
Okay.
From there, after high school, I went to New York University.
Okay.
I completed a bachelor's in Middle Eastern Islamic Studies and Political Science. And then that's kind of where things got a little difficult. I'm from a immigrant family. I'm first generation here, and so like
where are your
my parents are from Pakistan.
Pakistan.
Yeah, and so my dad's a doctor, my uncle's a doctor, all my cousins are being doctors.
Okay, so
know,
it's
so
like
the kind
you're
of
going to be a
thing.
doctor,
So
basically, is what
you'd be something. To be a chaplain wouldn't fit into the scheme of things, I think.
I bet my guess is that they don't even really have a reference for what a chaplain is. I mean, that's...
Well, it's surprising. Most people, when you think of the word chaplain, you associate it with something, that has a Christian background to it. You think of people that work in hospitals. The idea of having something on a university and then something that's, a Muslim could do is this, is totally out there. And so for me personally, when I completed my bachelor's, the first step was, okay, go to law school. So I went to law school for a year, trying to please my parents. And I think this is something, we'll probably talk about it later when you try to understand what Muslims experience, here in America and on college campuses. The idea was you have to do something that has a lot more job security, something that, would bring in a steady income, something that, if we try to get you married, we can't go and tell people that, oh, well, he's a clergyman.
He's a chaplain.
He's a chaplain. People are like, what is that?
Yeah.
So, I tried to go to law school for a year. The idea was I would complete a JD and then pursue a PhD in Islamic legal studies. But midway through my first year of law school, I just felt like it wasn't something I would really be able to do. The idea of working in an office, pushing papers 70, 80 hours a week, as lucrative as it might be, it wasn't something I felt I would be really using my own personal skill set to benefit people on a mass level. It would benefit me as an individual. But in terms of family life, things like that, it wasn't too appealing.
Right.
And so, I heard of this program that's in Hartford, the Hartford Theological Seminary,
which is a traditionally Christian seminary.
It's a traditionally Christian seminary. They have an institute there called the McDonald Institute for Muslim Christian Relations.
Yes.
They're supposed to be very famous internationally. And so Dr. Ingrid Mattson is their director.
Dr. Ingrid Mattson, who we might mention right now, just got elected to the head of ISNA, which is the Islamic Society of North America.
Yes, it's actually one of the largest North American Muslim organizations.
Yes.
They just had their annual conference in Chicago where there was about, I would say, 60,000 people attending. And she's the first female president as well.
And a convert.
And a convert.
And a convert, a Caucasian convert.
Yeah,
we actually invited her to Princeton to help us to figure out what a good Muslim chaplain would look like. And so I personally am acquainted with Dr. Mattson, and we're thrilled that she's now head of ISNA.
Great.
It's really wonderful.
It's wonderful, yeah.
So you're telling me about this program. Now, this is a chaplaincy.
Well, what they do is they're the only institution in America that has an actual accredited program which produces Muslim chaplains. And so the program itself is 72 credits. You get a master's in theology and you get certified in Islamic chaplaincy.
How many Islamic chaplains would you say there are in America? How long has this program been happening, and how many classmates do you have?
The program is growing now.
Yeah.
It's been in effect probably for the last 3 years or so. And so I've been told that, when it initially started, there was 1 or 2 students. It grew the next year's incoming class has 17 students.
Okay.
And so, what you're going to see here in the United States, especially at a university level, is a stronger need for Muslim chaplains. And more people are getting into it, because there's a larger market for it. And what they do that's kind of unique in comparison to when you think of someone, who's a traditional scholar of Islam, someone who would run a mosque, for example.
Yeah.
The program at Hartford incorporates a lot more classes in terms of understanding American Muslim identity.
Yeah.
They give you a lot more classes on counseling, advising, how to deal with more social issues and personal issues that people would, undergo on a daily basis. So, along from all the legal classes, the classes that would teach you about, how to interpret, Holy Scripture and things along those lines. You also have classes that would give you insight as to, okay, now someone's coming to see you, who has alcohol problems, or drug abuse problems, or just things that you would engage in, in daily activities, boyfriend, girlfriend problems,
Right.
having trouble in class, or, there's a whole spectrum of what Muslim students kind of face, if we're talking about universities in specific.
What would you say are some of the issues that a Muslim student would face at a secular university like Princeton? Understanding that there's a range of Muslim students, there's not like one brand fits all for,
yeah.
but what would be some of the things that you could imagine and are encountering in your role as a Muslim chaplain?
I mean, the thing to understand about, Muslim community in comparison to other communities is that, we don't have students that fit one specific background. You would have Muslims on campus that would be first generation, second generation, Muslims who are converts, Muslims who are born to convert parents, people who are black, white, brown, international, indigenous. And so to really be able to counsel and advise them, you have to understand where they're coming from specifically as people, because their culture, their tradition, their heritage, all these things kind of fit into, what kind of, outlook they have on life and how they're experiencing the issues that they are.
So how did you feel called to this? I mean, what was there, that's, I know, particularly Christian language, but how did you say, oh, okay, I'm going to not be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And, and I remember when I told my parents I was going to seminary, my mom was like, no, you're not. You're going to law school. So I think there's a similar identity, even though, but how did you kind of decide, okay, this is really what I feel like I want to do with?
I mean, prior to joining the chaplaincy program, I did a lot of activism work, in specific Islamic institutions. I served in, board of directors, chairs, presidencies, things along those lines. The things that I really enjoyed doing, throughout my undergraduate career, high school career, was, teaching, being able to help others, get through problems and issues. And so, it might not be as rewarding in terms of, from a financial aspect, but, if you ever have the opportunity to actually teach someone something and then you see them act upon it, months later or years later, it's something that's a reward in and of itself, to help someone get through a problem, get through some kind of social anxiety, go with them step by step and give them the confidence, that you can actually, reach a goal, reach an objective that will help you get through this current situation, this dilemma that you're facing. When you're with them, when they've overcome it, it fills you with this kind of feeling that you wouldn't really get, if you're sitting in an office and, somebody gives you a nice bonus check at the end of the year.
Right. It's incredibly gratifying work.
Definitely.
Although very labor intensive. My guess is that, especially given world politics and world religious climate, that you've had to really personally wrestle with what it means to be Muslim, what it means to be a Muslim leader, what it means to be a Muslim leader in America. All of these questions kind of converge in this particular position that you've taken.
Yeah,
what have been some of your thought processes in the time? I mean, you must have been at NYU for 9/11.
Yes.
And so, I imagine in the last 5 years you've had to really kind of go through your own process of integration in some ways of what has come of this both personal and public reflection.
Yeah, I mean, see, what becomes problematic is that Muslims have a tendency to either be very passive or you know, for lack of better words, we like to whine a lot or complain a lot. You know, we're in this situation, you know, people are looking at us like this, or you know, we critique or criticize those who are actually taking initiatives, but to be active or to actively, you know, approach problems is something that's not done on a mass level. One thing that I realized post 9/11, you know, and you know, with my current endeavors, is that it becomes incumbent upon Muslims to kind of do outreach, you know, go out and educate the people, because for the most part, you know, not only non-Muslims, but a lot of Muslims as well don't understand really what the fundamental teachings of Islam are. You know, a lot of Q&A sessions that I've had after lectures that I've given, you know, at churches, synagogues, universities, the questions that are asked, you know, if we just took the time to really, you know, 10 minutes out of a week, 20 minutes out of a week, you know, put some effort into really educating people, not even in terms of open proselytization or, you know, anything, you know, like that, but just factual-based information, you know, letting people know what the religion is about, you know, what it stands for, what its fundamental teachings are. I think you'd see a big change.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I think one of the things that impressed me in talking with you and looking at the work you've done is how proactive you've been in going out and engaging various communities. And I think one of the risks of any religious group or identity group is when they feel at risk, and so they retreat into this kind of enclave, and they don't want to have anything to do, and so there's a real separation. What I see in the work that you've been involved in with even you know, the Jewish community at NYU, already here at Princeton, this kind of outreach that I really admire, and I think that that is part of the key to all of our tendencies to say, oh, you know what, it's easier for me just to be with my people. And say, okay, I'm going to, you know, oh, those people over there, they don't have, you know, and instead you're really like always kind of breaking out and doing it in a very graceful way, which I have to say that's one of the most attractive things about having you here at Princeton.
Yeah, I mean, post 9/11, you know, we had, you know, circumstances that, you know, a lot of people, unless you're actually dealing with it, you know, you wouldn't really be able to understand what people were going through, you know. You know, in terms of, you know, why universities need Muslim chaplains, when I was at NYU as an undergrad, we had no central authoritative figure, you know, so we had to deal with things like backlash, you know, parents who were worried about their children, you know, everything was done by the students. You know, we developed buddy systems so that people would have, you know, people to go with them on the trains. You know, if they were taking buses, no one would go around by themselves because there was just this kind of anxiety as to what might happen. And then, you know, echoing on what you were saying, you know, you had a lot of Muslims that, you know, if they were male, they decided to shave off their beards. You know, women who wore the headscarves, you know, said that it might be better for us to, instead of wearing a scarf on our head, maybe we'll wear a hooded sweatshirt, so we'll kind of blend in a little more. You know, what I think is necessary is that you do need to have people who kind of display their Muslim identity, not necessarily in terms of an external manifestation of it, but, you know, in terms of things that would carry over, you know, all kinds of faith-based communities, right? I think, you know, we need to have people who stand for principles of integrity and virtue and honesty and things in those lines. And so, you know, those are the kind of things that kind of got tucked away as well, because it was like, you know, if you go out and speak on behalf of your people or any people in defense of them, you know, the people who have a contrary opinion, you know, they might engage you in some kind of argumentation. You know, it might leave some kind of public image of you that's not necessarily the most positive. It could be detrimental to you in a lot of different ways. But it's like, you know, if some people aren't willing to take those steps to kind of speak out in some capacities or be a resource for communities at large, then, you know, a lot of people are just going to get left behind.
That's right. I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it seems to me that there's a particular opportunity for Muslims in America in the sense of, unlike, say, France, where there's a real, like, okay, no headscarves in the schools. And there's, I think that in some ways that, anyway, my hope is, maybe it's more that just my optimistic spirit, but my hope would be that that Muslims would feel like this was a place where they could really thrive within their Muslim identity and yet be part of the American dream. I mean, Muslims are actually doing quite well financially in America. And so in some ways they're fitting in very well on many, many levels. And then it's, and so I don't know. Am I off base there?
I mean, it makes perfect sense. You know, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot throughout the world, and you know, it's interesting the way Islam is able to be practiced here. In some countries that you know would be called Muslim countries, you don't have those kind of freedoms. I remember when I was an undergrad, you know, I was thinking of going abroad to study Arabic, and I was going to various places, and you know, my sister-in-law is from Egypt, and so her family said, why don't you go to Egypt? You know, we could set up some classes there and things. But they said, if you go, you know, make sure that, you know, you don't walk around in a, you know, long kind of flowing robe that you've probably seen some Muslims wear. You know, don't wear a turban, you know, don't cover your head because people will look at you differently. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm in a Muslim country, how is that even possible? But the thing is, when I walk around here on the streets of New Jersey or in New York, you know, I can wear whatever I want to, and you know, and people are you know, more receptive than sometimes Muslims are. So you do have the ability to practice with a lot more freedom here, I feel. A lot of people come to me and they say, you know, if you have the opportunity to leave the United States, would you? You know, would you go and move to a Muslim country? Would you go and move somewhere else? You know, the word is called hijrah, basically, that you leave from one country and migrate to another. And you know, I tell them, where would you go? Or, you know, why would you leave? You know, you're able to do things here that you might not necessarily be able to do elsewhere. You know, we're not, you know, in a country that mandates theology in terms of its constitutional law or its governance. So you're never going to have the institutionalization of, you know, 5 daily prayers and things like that, you know, and people will be penalized. But you do have the ability to affect public policy to an extent that it will be sensitive to the needs and, you know, the issues that Muslims face. And, you know, I don't believe that the response is, you know, well, it's a little tough for us now, you know, we should just get up and leave. You know, we should work at a grassroots level and then work our way up, you know, and affect local communities, you know, such as universities, you know, take on the Muslim chaplain position, but have it be filled with people who are qualified, you know, and who are actually able to do the work and, you know, educate people on a mass level.
And with a sensitivity to the university setting, which is inherently a pluralistic setting, where there's a lot of ideas, you know, being exchanged, and I think it's an opportunity. My feeling is that one of the great opportunities of being present at the university is that we have all these students who are from different religious backgrounds in this incredible close proximity, and they can learn from each other in such a deep way that it appreciates their difference, but also become fluent in kind of what it means to be Muslim. You know, I mean, I think that's a real opportunity that your presence and the presence of Muslim students at Princeton allows the rest of the population as well as each of the traditions, and so it's a wonderful opportunity. Now, one of the things that I remember the first time I went to a Muslim country, which I guess was Morocco, and I remember waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to call to prayer, and I remember just thinking, oh my God, how beautiful!
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, in just you know, just purely in this fluid, it was just like, it reminded me, oh, pay attention. You know, pay attention to what's now. And so I was wondering if you'd be willing just to offer just a maybe, I don't know if it's called a prayer, whatever you feel comfortable, maybe reciting just a few lines, because I know your voice is exquisite, and we're very lucky to have it here. So maybe just a few lines, and we can talk about that.
Sure, we could do that. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يعوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم صدق الله العظيم.
What's the translation of that?
I mean, in direct translation, you would get a lot of things lost from the Arabic to English. But basically, what the verse, that's actually one verse in the Quran in its entirety. And it's speaking about, the greatness of God, His majesty over the heavens and the earth, His being the Most High, the All-Aware. And so it's said to be, in a tradition, one of the companions asked the Prophet, or one of the companions rather is asked, what is the most powerful verse in the Quran? And he says this verse, that, it speaks a lot about the sublimeness and the glory of God, and, just how truly great He is.
Where did you learn to recite like that?
We have a science that's called tajweed. And so Muslims believe that the Quran has maintained its original form, since it was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 14 centuries ago. But not only do we believe that, but we have this science that teaches us how to read it as it was read 1400 years ago. And so today, you have lots of individuals who would be able to teach it to you. The actual fluctuation of the voice isn't something that's taught, but what they teach you is how to pronounce the letters properly and rules that go along with the letters. And so there's about, I would say between 12 to 16 rules that are there that, if you learn them, just naturally your voice will take certain fluctuations and intonations. So I had the opportunity to learn actually here in New Jersey from people.
That's very beautiful. Now, we're about to come upon Ramadan, and are you planning anything special for yourself or for the students at Princeton? What's your hope for someone who is about to embark on Ramadan, a Muslim who's in your care? What would you like them to get out of this month?
I think in terms of Princeton in specific, the month of Ramadan is unique in that, especially on a university campus, you've left home, you're kind of by yourself, and so a lot of people, freshmen in particular, they feel very lost, they've left their families behind, they get kind of homesick. During the month of Ramadan, we fast from sunrise till sunset, and at sunset we have dinner that's called iftar, where everyone comes together and breaks their fast. And so if you're home, you would do it with your family. And now you're at a university, where do I do it? Who do I go and eat with? I'm going to be by myself in my dorm room. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is, facilitate dinners for the students at large, undergraduates and graduate students. And so that's one of the things that we'll be doing. Then there's unique prayers that are offered during the month of Ramadan at night, and so we'll be offering those here on campus as well. In terms of myself individually, I can honestly say that the month of Ramadan, it's an experience on an individual level that, it's very beneficial. It gives you the opportunity to reflect a lot, contemplate a lot about not only your own daily activities, but just what's going on in the world around you. And so, we're encouraged to be more generous during the month of Ramadan. We're trying to plan some fundraising events, some community service initiatives, things like that, just to help the community at large here.
I remember with a Muslim friend of mine, we were comparing Lent and Ramadan. Now, Lent is you give up one thing, and I tend to give up sugar and meat during that month. And she was like, "Oh, for the entire time." And I was like, "Listen, it doesn't compare to Ramadan, where you really no water for that's very. It's an amazing discipline, but I do think it both in their own way kind of heightened awareness of what's truly important.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, this kind of mindless consumption, you know, that maybe it kind of calls those kind of things into question and makes us just be observant to the world around us.
Well, one of the things that we're taught, actually, there's a verse in the Quran, you know, it's in English, it says, "O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you will have this thing called taqwa in Arabic." And, you know, it translates into words like piety, God consciousness, you know, things like that. But really, it's that you have a cognizance of where you are and what's going on. And what's interesting about that verse is that it says also for those who came before you, you know, that it was something that was there. And so you do find a tradition of fasting, you know, in the Judeo-Christian tradition.
That's right.
You know, one of the things that we're planning on campus, actually, you know, Ramadan coincides with Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah.
That's
and
right.
so with the Jewish Center, we're going to be having a joint dinner, I believe, on September 29th.
Oh,
so
I'm glad to hear about that. That's great. That's great. We're so glad that you're here. Is there anything that you particularly would like to tell the inner core audience that about if they're Muslim, or if especially for non-Muslims out there? Is there any message that you'd like to convey?
I mean, I would just let them know that, you know, primarily, you know, Muslims are just like any other people. You know, we go out. You know, we go to restaurants. You know, we watch movies. We watch TV. You know, we engage in the same activities that everyone else would. And so any kind of, you know, ideas of, I think any community that's defined by its religiosity, you know, they're still made up of normal individuals and human beings. In terms of myself personally, you know, I feel that I just want everyone to know that I'm not just a resource for the Muslim students, excuse me, but the community at large.
Yeah.
You know, across faith divides.
We've already seen that at Princeton, that you're really available, and we're so glad that you're here, and really looking forward to this year of working together with you and with all of the different faith traditions at Princeton University. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for being here, Khalid. We're so glad that you're at Princeton. It has been my pleasure to be here with you. Again, my name is Paul Rauschenbusch, Associate Dean of Religious Life in the Chapel. This has been the Inner Core. We're glad you spent this time with us, and I hope you have a blessed and peaceful day. Take care.